Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending. I think we are between you and the reception, so it's almost here. You're almost ready to have some drinks and some food. Just wait it out a little bit longer. So thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you to Marlena and Luis for what I'm sure will be a very informative and engaging conversation. Unfortunately, George, our third panel member, couldn't be with us today because he had a loss in the family, so our thoughts are with him and his family. We are here today to talk about social media as a tool for engaging the diaspora in the Puerto Rico crisis, and I'm certainly looking forward to that conversation and to getting everyone's feedback and questions. Let's make this a good one. Next to me on the left, and I'll give a little taste of your bio, Marlena, and then you should definitely jump in. Certainly an accomplished and impressive academic career, Master in Arts in Bilingual Creative Writing, Master in Arts in Labor Relation, and a Bachelor in Social Sciences with a minor in music, which sounds incredibly interesting. A radio host, production and programming leader, co-founder of a media company, and a resident of the Bronx with two cats, Gala and Angora.
Agador.
Agador, I'm sorry, an Agador.
Like the birdcage.
Right.
Indeed, indeed. Anything else I have missed?
Yes, people. That is me also, the notorious merciless troll of 45. Yes, that is me. And by the way, the sunglasses are on not because I'm just cool, but because I have pink eye. So don't get near me unless you really want to call in sick at work.
Well, we're thankful that you're here today. And then to my other left, we have Luis Maldonado, a well-respected marketing professional within our community and a champion for our community, a board member of the National Puerto Rican Day Parade, a partner and managing director at Disposito and Partners, and someone who's really dedicated a large portion of his career to work within our community and with NGOs.
That's right. Thank you so much. I was also a music major in college. So I started a music major, and then I got my MBA, and then now I'm here.
Excellent.
Life happens.
Excellent, excellent.
Music happens too.
That's right.
So we're all consumers of social media. Some of us are more active than others. But I'll start by asking the panel, how do you leverage social media as a tool in your daily life and how you use it as an engagement tool, not only in terms of our diaspora community, but just in your daily living?
Yeah. I'll answer the second part first, the diaspora and in terms of the parade, because actually we use it's a critical tool to the work that we are doing with the parade. I came onto the board with many other current board members in 2014. We were a reconstituted board back then, and we really committed ourselves to leveraging the power of the parade as a platform to help inform the community, take on some critical issues that are very much alive in the community, both here in the States as well as in Puerto Rico. And social media is a truly valuable tool to trying to keep that dialogue going year-round. We always get lots of press, starting about now, in the month leading up to the parade, but it's really a year-round conversation that we want to have with our followers, not only from the sense that we are trying to inform and promote our messages, but also most critically in terms of listening to the community on their opinions, because that was one of the many things that the community had voiced back in that 2013-2014 timeframe, was that the parade needs to be a parade for the people as it was originally intended, and that we need to listen to the community on, their views and what they would like to see. So I think it's really, that's the way we leverage social media, and it's been really helpful over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, as a writer and a journalist, it's very important to incorporate those tools to actually help, in this case, musicians or bands or, whatever it is that you're promoting or actually criticizing, help them sell or not sell albums. But also it's about sending a message, and it's very important one of the things that we do on my personal life too is utilize the tool and all the tools available as a democratic platform, right? So there's a sense of anonymity for most people, unless you're sitting right behind the camera now. There's a sense of anonymity and disattachment when we want to say what we have to say. And there is an advantages to that. The problem is it's the other end of the spectrum when we are then branching out and spreading out false information. But luckily enough, that tool is also available to fix these problems, right? So for engagement in the case of music or in the case of political movements, it's about outreaching to other individuals or organizations or institutions that otherwise you wouldn't actually have a stronghold there. In the case of Puerto Rico, and I've said this before and I cannot stress this enough, one of the things that is very important is if you as an institution or as an individual want to send out that message, you have got to do it in both languages. Because not everybody speaks English, and not everybody speaks Spanish. So if we want to engage, it has to come in both languages. If you don't speak both languages, then that's your responsibility to find someone that can help you do that or find a reliable translator. So being bilingual is a tool, particular for an institutional and an organizational spectrum, is crucial, right? When you try to organize communities, also, there's something really creative about, creative writing. Do you have a limited amount of time to grab someone's attention? Because this is a very loud space. So, I'm speaking as a troll. One of the things that I find very, very effective, and I'm not alone here, is that you always have to inject humor. And more importantly, in case you're taking notes, dare to be fearless. That is crucial. You have to stand out in a very loud and a very crowded space. And it's really an oxymoron, right? Because it's a cyberspace, it's intangible, yet it is very loud and very crowded. So be as creative as you can, pack as much as you can with information in 140 characters, because it works. It does work, but you have to be very creative. What is your message? Inject humor, be serious, and be fearless.
Excellent. How do you said a couple of things about social media in general. Number one, it's a crowded space. Number two, we know that it's immediate, it's instant, it's almost fleeting. So how do you drive real engagement in a space that is crowded and in a space that moves so quickly? How do you instill a longer lasting effect and a deeper effect?
Actually, like I said, first creativity. That's number one. If you don't inject humor, if you don't inject the proper content and quality content, that's debatable. But I always go by quality content. I'm married to that proposition, right? Mm-hmm. That's number one. If you have something crappy, that's exactly what you're going to attract, mm-hmm. right?
Content is king.
Content is key. Now, if you're speaking, if you're doing it as an individual and you want to grab attention, cause an impact with your humor. You can tell that I'm on the humor side because I believe that it's harder to make someone laugh than it is to make someone cry. You will always attract drama, but to attract attention, really get into that humor vein or shock value. Now, the problem with shock value is it opens up the debate. However, is there a problem with that? I'll leave that up to you to answer that on your own, belief system. Now, to trigger engagement, then you probably want to open that can of worms. Throw a question out there. What is debatable for you? And you can, don't fall into the clickbait space, because the problem is now we're talking about algorithms, and then you will actually not, that's for another conversation, but then what you are actually engaging on won't show up. Science. which clearly I'm not. I'm a musician, you see what I mean? That's how far my numbers go. But algorithms will actually stop you from delivering messages. So no clickbait and no fake news. Look how, to identify what is fake, and don't do, anything that goes, oh my God, the crocodile actually teared up and what you see, it will blow you away. That's clickbait. Because then everybody clicks, and suddenly that actually, when you do that, it brings down your, please help me here. Your engagement will go down, right? So be very creative, and don't be afraid to ask questions, and content is key.
Absolutely. And this is where the marketer in me comes in, is know your audience. I think that's the cardinal rule that we always follow, is know your audience, know what they want to hear, know what language they want to receive it in, and how to be expressed. We were talking earlier that for the parade, it's very easy to gain engagements whenever we post a flag, whenever we post a wepa, whenever we post something very patriotic, we get lots and lots and lots of likes, which is great, because that's part of what we are, is to celebrate and to foster this tradition and culture. But the other part of what we want to also achieve is, again, I go back to using the parade as a platform to help inform and educate, and to carry certain messages or promote certain causes. So having something very celebratory and patriotic versus something that is a heavier topic like Año Martín Peña, or the economic crisis that's happening in Puerto Rico, even though we see that as perhaps more important and more urgent, and a message that we really want to get out and engage in a dialogue, we might get 35 likes or 2 shares, as opposed to the thousands of likes and hundreds of shares. So it's how do you serve it up so that you can still have the serious conversations, inject the humor or, the jokes as deemed appropriate, but then also try and make sure that you engage them so that the message gets across.
We had, as often you do with panels, you have a pre-conversation, and so we had a conversation I think about a week ago on some of this, and we were talking about how the chancleta jokes, are so definitely drive engagement, but then how do you really bring in some of the real conversations? What are some of the drawbacks of using social media platforms for engagement? I think trolling, you've alluded to that.
Sure.
Fake information being spread around, and I think also bullying, and this is a big problem with particularly kids. There was a case, you've seen, I'm sure you've all heard about cases where, unfortunately, someone created a fake profile and it has drawn people to commit atrocities. So tragedy aside, it's a drawback when you can't identify who are you speaking with and what are their but more importantly, what the intent is. If you can't, again, this is a crowded space that is still intangible, right? And you don't know the real persona. A lot of people may judge me by the joke or by me, hey, I'm gonna fix your tweet. And then suddenly, what was it? Today was trending with a few exceptions, hashtag with a few exceptions. So he talks about, the AP talk that the lawyer said, I'm talking about, I refuse to say his name, Scrotus, 45. So I said, oh, by the way, yeah, he's also deporting bad hombres and criminals, hashtag with a few exceptions, or, stuff like that, and being very sarcastic. Now, people may judge me, and of course, I get people chastising me. Now, don't care, so, whatever, and I let it go. But you have to have that strong personality to say, I open the can of worms for people to come and attack me. And then you also have other people that are retweeting and, oh my God, I love this, and that kind of stuff. So, but the engagement is there. However, if it would have been anybody else.
If the engagement isn't driving your goal, at least the engagement is there?
The engagement is there, and also because ultimately, the numbers are there, and this is driven by numbers. But in my case, and I'm not the only one, of course, it's about opening that debate. Are you reading between the lines of what this person is saying, for God's sake? With a few, are you kidding me? No, there's no Russian income with a few exceptions. Okay, do you really believe we're that stupid? Seriously. So, I'm starting making those jokes like that, and then, it opens that kind of words, and next thing you know, there are, hundreds of thousands of people, not in this case, but, tweeting this, and it becomes viral. But the message is there. People are being sarcastic and cynical, saying we're not that stupid. That's the message, really. We still want to know what's in that paperwork. What is it that you're trying to say? That's the whole point. So the drawback, however, is that you don't know what the intent is by some of these people because you don't know these people. It's not a face-to-face conversation. So that's why you always have to be careful because, it opens to bullies, it opens to, God knows what else that you're not protected from.
It could lead you into a different conversation.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if there's so much, at least for us, drawbacks or just realities. I mean, I guess sometimes they're the same. But the reality, at least that we encounter many times, is just the varying opinions that are out there. And that's not just to the social media space, that's in life in general, particularly when it comes to the parade, because the wonderful thing about our community is that we're very diverse and we have many different perspectives, and there's folks on the island and there's folks here, what we like to call la patria extendida instead of diaspora. But and that's a wonderful thing, but every person respectably has their own opinion and their own stance on something. So that's why we really rely on our theme, which is Un Pueblo, Muchas Voces, one nation, many people, because it recognizes that everybody has a different opinion, and our job as an icon in the community, or an institution in the community, I should say, is to put the information on the table and just foster the discussion. In most cases, we don't take a stance. But while you're doing that, there are folks that are not necessarily as informed. There are folks that perhaps do not necessarily respect as much the fact that there are other opinions out there, and you just have to sort of manage those conversations. A lot of times we'll get, in fact, it just happened this week, you'll get a request or some sort of bold post or comment that the parade should do this. Well, it's like, if you look, just scroll down a little bit. We posted about that 2 days ago, exactly what you're asking about. But that's just the reality. So it's just a matter of, again, how do you see the message? Many times you have to repeat the messages. I think the other reality that literally keeps me up at night is just the immediacy, the real-timeness of social media and trying to respond to things because of the speed that it can take on. Before you know it, it can get out of hand or perhaps take a direction that you may not want it to go. So I think that's the other reality we deal with.
Well said. Well said. So we'll open up to questions from the audience. Who wants to start with question number 1? I can keep on going through my list of questions, please.
Hello, I'm following Marlena. So one of the things I struggle with as a Boricua on the West, those of you that are on the West, are the hashtags to follow regarding conversations around, and this is on Twitter, contextualized, to follow what's going on, whether it's the diaspora on the East Coast or on Puerto Rico. What are the common hashtags that each of you follow to keep up to date? I know there are many.
There are
Pick a couple.
countless. You can go to #Ify. It usually look what's trending. You can also in your settings, it tells you what's trending and wherever it is that you live. So for me, I have them in New York. And you all have that on that column, and I think in Instagram too. Puerto Rico, Puerto Ricans, and Stand Up for Puerto Rico. Actually, the hashtag Stand Up for Puerto Rico has been really visible for over a year, and that's we talked about that particular hashtag here in the first summit that we had. And I wanted to add, but to continue, I wanted to add something that you said yesterday, and there was a conversation that came from a lady from Puerto Rico, and she was chastising all writers, and she started tagging, which is another drawback. Each one of the writers that have written about Puerto Rico that do not live in Puerto Rico, and Gabe Gonzalez, who was in the panel last year, was in it. Julio Ricardo Varela was in it. My name was in it. Javier Peña. I mean, And she started chastising us because, you're hypocrites and you're there, and whatnot. So my response to that, and probably it's a little bit out there, and like basically what she meant was that we don't have the right, if we don't live in the island, we don't have the right to say anything. My father died as a result of the debt crisis. And I said, I have the right to say whatever I have to say because your father's still alive, but I have to bury mine. So there's a sense of insensitivity because you don't know these people and what the intent is. We got to be very careful when we cross those lines. So a battle ensued because when I responded to that, then all these insults starting back and forth that nothing to do. I actually even turned off the notifications. People that nothing to do, they don't know me, but people had the need to say something about it. And then I actually even felt bad for her because she was really chastised from New York, right? So we have to be very, very careful. That's my invitation to you. We can be as cruel as we want and hide behind a screen, but that's highly irresponsible, right? So, and why is this part of the answer? Because we tend to, particularly on Instagram, create many hashtags. And they all appear, those are always ever present. And you will see it on the list. Always ever present, some have emojis and all that kind of stuff. We gotta be very careful because the internet is forever. The internet is forever. So if you want something to trend, please be responsible. And create something that is engaging, that opens up the debate, that is informational, but you're not hurting and bullying anybody unless you're a troll and you're trying to get fixing 45's tweets. That's my invitation to you. No, I'm kidding.
But to your point, the anonymity is
The anonymity. And remember, yes, there are bots out there. But do you know what bots are? Okay. I saw some people go like this, and saw some people go like this.
Let's explain.
Robots. They're created. They're fake profiles. And they will react, and then you can actually, they don't have a profile picture. There are ways to identify them, and they're constantly tweeting the exact same thing, this particularly in Twitter. You see the exact same copy, and it's just computers generating this. So yeah, there are some fake profiles out there that are not human beings, okay? That aside, it doesn't matter. Please be responsible in who you're talking to, but more importantly, what you're saying, that it doesn't backfire. Because yes, let me tell you, there are atrocities happening out there, and the last thing you need is someone coming to your door. Hey, by the way, it happened actually in the West Coast. It did happen to us. A lady posted something in LA. And someone in Boston found out. Next thing we know, the police in Boston are knocking in their doors, calling the LAPD to go. Yes, so that has happened. That happened like 2 years ago, to particularly a group of people that I know. So please be very responsible with it. That's my invitation to you.
Okay. The ones we use, we actually use the same two that we follow, and especially when it comes to matters related to keeping up to date, matters related to the economic crisis and things that the community are doing, or some of the activism, so Stand Up for Puerto Rico and Puerto Rico, Puerto Ricans, but as well as the Orgullo Boricua, WEPAs, because of more the honorees that we try and track, some of the things that we want to try and highlight in terms of our accomplishments, our achievements, the content to continue promoting throughout the year. So those are 4 of the ones that we follow quite a bit.
Next question.
And then, of course, ours, #PR Parade.
Of course. Next question. Go for it. I'm sorry, we cannot see with the light.
Yeah, the
That's our
light is
problem.
like right here.
Okay, so my question comes from a lot of news feed that I find in my Facebook page, because I'm starting to be kind of like an activist for like this solidarity and what's going on in Puerto Rico. And I've been seeing a lot of people saying and asking, and I guess this is my question for Luis. The parade. I know, and I think I read this on Latino Rebel, the comunicado
Sure. So, and that's actually not something that's new to this year. That was something that started last year, perhaps even the year before, when the economic crisis really took on sort of a new level of attention and a new level of sense of urgency, where, for rightfully so, many in the community are saying, how can we have this celebration and dance around on Fifth Avenue when so many of our families are struggling, in a very dire way back on the island. And some folks even last year were asking us, actually, instead of turning our parade into a march, they were saying last year to cancel the parade and let's march in Washington. But this is a 60-year tradition that people look forward to, that generations of families go to, so that you can sort of pass down the culture and the history and talk about key figures and dances and music and whatever it might be. But more than that, it's, again, the platform where, on a global scale, really, I track the earned media and the social media from the parade. We get covered everywhere. And it's like, how can we not use that opportunity to drive home the issues that are happening and drive home the messages? It's a perfect venue for this, right? So it's about finding that proper balance to continue honoring the tradition and celebrating what we've achieved, and certainly uplifting our people at a time that we need it more than ever to be uplifted, but then not being out of touch to make sure that we also deliver the messages that we need to. So I'm sorry, what was your name? What Larissa was referring to was a petition that was out for us to convert the parade into a march. And quite honestly, the parade has always, since 60 years ago, had a sense of a march about it. So it's sort of part of the parade's DNA and something that we've always had. Back in 2014, one of the key causes that we took on and that was demonstrated in the parade was, the plea for the Borinqueniers to receive the Congressional Gold Medal of Honor. In 2015 rather, it was Caño Martín Peña, the environmental justice, and really asking for Congress to appropriate funds to help the situation there, as well as the Medicare parity for Puerto Rico. Last year was LGBTQ equality and marriage equality. And there's risks that come with taking on some of those key issues because, again, somos un pueblo con muchas voces. Everybody's got a different opinion, but we just inform and we put it out there and help celebrate who we are.
And people are reacting to Oscar Lopez Rivera.
Yep.
And how important is, how important are some of these platforms and how you really gauge the community when you think about planning for the parade or when you think about throughout the year?
They're very important because, again, it tells of our collective history. It raises issues that many folks are not privy to, they just aren't aware of, or perhaps not as informed, or maybe they've heard about it, but they really don't know. And to a certain degree, it certainly does help us engage. Sometimes the engagement may not be what we want, but it's almost like the old adage, no press is bad press. It's sort of this, no social media is really truly bad social media, as long as you know how to manage the conversation.
Indeed. Next question, right there, Isabel.
So one of the things you said is know your audience, and if your audience is really, broad, how do you choose what tone to use, what language to use? Do you interchange it, or how do you go about it?
Well, I can tell you how we do it for the parade. Sometimes we do it bilingually, in both languages, if it's a broader statement. But if it's something that has to deal more with something in New York or something in Orlando or something that's more about the folks that are living here, we'll lead in English. If it's something that has to do more with something happening on the island that would be more, attuned to folks there, we'll do it in Spanish. Sometimes it's in Spanglish. But again, it's a great question because we certainly have a wide audience, and so it's about understanding those subsegments of that audience to see how you can really sort of engage and target them.
I'm going to go ahead and inject here, not as a moderator, but as a panelist. I had the pleasure and the honor of serving in the Obama administration as Michelle Obama's communications director. And if you can imagine, that's a pretty big audience that you're speaking to on a regular basis. And for us, And it was really driven by the former First Lady herself, who was incredibly creative and very engaged in social media, in part because she has 2 teenage daughters, right, who were driving that conversation at home. So often for us, the message was most important, right? To the point of content was real important. And then, of course, we would be thinking about the audience, but as long as your message was strong enough, as long as you knew exactly what you wanted to communicate, the audience would sort of, the audience dynamic would follow. And so content is king, message is king or queen, and that's what really then starts to draw in the engagement.
I would add that also, I mean, if you can actually customize it if you if you want to go this route, you can go with the analytics and see, what audiences are engaging at what times, and then send several messages targeting that audience. So have the content, have your message. What is it that you're trying to say? And then if at 8 a.m., morning drive, let's say, pretending it's radio or something like that, you have 40 to 65 listening, then how are you going to copy it to them? Versus, 8 p.m., which is most millennials are right now at home, how are you going to tackle?
Yeah, and some people would argue that that's exactly what this president is doing. That obviously he's incredibly active on Twitter, and what he's following is the AB model, where he's essentially putting something out in the morning, putting 2 messages out in the morning and figuring out what's playing, what's really catching on, and then he continues to deliver on that.
In comparison to Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, which one is the one that you guys prefer the most?
I use everything.
What's everything?
Okay, but and that is a good segue. Depending on for personal, to be honest with you, for anything more personal, Facebook is best, right? The settings can go private. Yes, you can privatize your tweets, but it's a lot less content for a broader audience, whereas Facebook is a little bit more customized. You have more space to say what you have to say. Versus Twitter. Twitter will get you, it also depends on content. I mean, Twitter is great for news because it runs faster. It's immediately, the tweets are 1 million a minute, right? Whereas in Facebook, it really does depend on how many people you have on your end of the spectrum. In Twitter, it really doesn't matter. It's really, really viral. So I would say that I like both, depending on what my message is. If I want to post something personal, or something that requires a larger copy, a piece of news that I want to express an opinion that is more than 140 characters, I will use Facebook. But I use Twitter more as an informational or, already established if I want to fix what he is saying. Yeah.
We use all of them as well. And, I would add Instagram and Snapchat. But I think the 2 that we use the most are Facebook and Twitter. Of the 2, more Facebook than Twitter. But all of our Facebook posts go on to Twitter as well. But if there's something that's, we really want to underscore, really want to get something out, regarding a key piece of information or a particular theme or topic or whatever, we will actually customize a Twitter message so that it doesn't have that little link that you have to go to Facebook to see the rest of it. And that's year round. And then as we get toward the parade, we start using the Instagrams and the Snapchats a little bit more to engage, broader audiences. But the Facebook and Twitter are the primary ones.
For me? Personally, Instagram. I'll tell you, Instagram for me is in the evening, it just becomes my decompression, right? So it's something that I can just scroll through and enjoy. I think in terms of a messaging tool, Twitter for sure, and Facebook in terms of engagement. And I now work at a consumer products company. I work for the Estée Lauder companies. We have 30 brands. And so we know that in order to reach the millennial consumer, the younger consumer is definitely active on Snap. And so we have to be on Snap, and we have to be on Snap in a really creative and robust way. But anything that has to do with the business, it's on Twitter.
I just want to say, I'm the president of the North Puerto Rican Day Parade. I took an organization that was dead. What brought it to life was social media.
Right.
That was what brought it back to life. I had people of all ages, from young kids to grandmas and 90-year-olds telling me in the street, I saw what you put.
Right.
I know about the parade. I know what's coming. And that's like the success of the organization. I've been president now for 3 years. Has been social media. And I to listen to you talk. Okay, it inspires me because you and I basically at the same frame of mind.
Yeah.
We need to make this now happen because as a Puerto Rican and as a Puerto Rican with what we're going on here and in Puerto Rico, we need to be on point.
That's right.
I have never followed you on none of those social media outlets, but I will.
Okay, good.
Because
Thank you.
one thing that happens to me a lot, I get a lot of calls asking, what's going to happen in the New York Puerto Rican parade? No, but what's going to happen in the parade? I say, do you mean the New York parade? Yeah, I say, no, this is the North parade.
Right.
Oh. So I give them your information.
Sure, thank you.
From a lot of folks that we turn on to you guys was about the scholarships.
Right.
Like we sent out a lot of folks from Jersey, okay, for your scholarship because they were reaching out to us.
Reaching out to you.
It was you.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for that. And congratulations on reviving the parade. I would add, I said we use mostly Facebook and Twitter. A part of that is for the very reasons we're talking about in terms of either what's the best platform for your message or what's the best platform to engage. But honestly, part of it's just the reality that we have certain levels of bandwidth. All of us are volunteers. There's only so many of us that can help manage this stuff. And to try and do stuff that's customized for every platform can be a really, really heavy lift, which is why we do it a little bit more at specific times throughout the year. Because, Snapchat's very demanding. So
Yeah, it is.
you have to
That is a
have
good
dedicated
point.
resources.
I forgot to mention that, thank you, that social media is a 800-pound gorilla that is a vegetarian. Imagine how many fruits and veggies, buckets and buckets and pounds do you have to give a day to this mammal? So, ape. So, social media is, there are people that on SEO alone, search engine optimization, which is highly difficult, have 40-hour work weeks. I mean, it's a full-time job. Social media for organizations is a monster that you need to continue to feed and feed and feed behind the scenes with analytics, knowing your audience, what are the times that are engaging, measuring those likes, measuring the shares, the engagement, that's very important. And also, well, it is a free focus group. What's the commentary? Engaging, you need someone to answer those comments. And you work at Estée Lauder, I don't wear that, I have lipstick, but I don't, so I don't engage in anything cosmetics, but I can imagine, people saying, oh, I like that shade, and oh my God, I
It's
cannot.
a feedback mechanism
It's
like
a
no
feedback
other.
mechanism. And also, it can destroy you if I don't like that shade, oh my God, my hair fell off, this, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what, sorry, I just know. But
We get everything.
You can imagine, well, you're finding out about that. Instead of someone just sending you a letter and then filing a lawsuit, oh my God, someone's hair fell off and now that we need to get this off the market.
Right.
And now it's instant. So there are people that have full-time jobs for this. And it is a lot of work for, branding, for
You need
communications.
dedicated resources.
Yes.
That's for sure. I want to be mindful of time. We have time for maybe 2 more questions. I can see right here in the middle. I'm sorry that I'm pointing.
Sorry, no, it's Cristina. I do digital for Latino justice. And I was just curious about how do you develop campaigns with targeted issues, and how do you measure the success of those campaigns? Like, what analytics would you say are the most pertinent, and how would you use the same campaign on each platform?
Yeah, I can take that because we talked a little bit about this. So, the one thing we try to do, because again, we are all volunteers pretty much, and we have a couple of consultants to help, but even a lot of comes with the spirit of volunteerism. Rather than create something from scratch, if there's an institution, if there's a group, if there's a nonprofit, if there's a campaign that already exists out there that has similar missions, similar values, similar messages, and you can partner and help each other out, that's one of the ways that we try to go about it as, the Puerto Rican Day Parade, being part of the community. So for instance, with Caño Martín Peña, that's exactly what we did. There was a group in Puerto Rico called Enlace, that's what their charge was. And they had a campaign that they had going on in Puerto Rico, that they already had their strategy, their messaging, lots of their hashtags, their initiatives, and they had actually had their own agency that did pro bono work, ad agency, doing pro bono work that we were able to leverage. And what we brought to them was increased exposure. We brought the celebrity honorees that were often, part of our parade to their campaign to help, amplify the reach and gain celebrity participation. So they would never have otherwise gotten Rita Moreno or Lin-Manuel Miranda or Yvonne Cole, but all of them and more contributed to their campaign because we partnered with them to do so. And the same was with the Borinqueniers. So we tried to see, okay, is there something that's already out there that we can work together rather than creating something from scratch? Because particularly in social media, again, depending on what you're trying to achieve and who your audience is, creating a community from scratch is no easy feat. So that's many times the way we try to do it.
Great. Any last question before we wrap up?
I guess I have one. I find it interesting that we didn't touch on YouTube at all, and especially in the cosmetics industry, and being able to reach out to bloggers directly to have them reach their millions of followers. I mean, I think YouTube is growing even way more than it has been in the last few years.
Right.
How is the best way to engage the bloggers, and do you tell them specific ways to talk to their viewers?
So I'll start that. It's particularly important in the beauty industry,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't want to come here to talk about the Estée Lauder companies. What I can tell you, YouTube as a platform for engagement, right? Whether it's our community, the Puerto Rican community in the United States, or my time at the White House, we certainly had a very active strategy with particular celebrities within the YouTube world. And we would bring them in and we would want to brief them just like you would brief, any other reporter or any other media person. We want to brief them on our initiatives. And then we would certainly seek, and I mean, you saw this, you saw the president and you saw the first lady sit down with YouTubers on a regular basis, because we recognize not only their reach, but we recognize that that was a platform that allowed the individuals to shine, right? The personality to come out. And a lot of times people talk about how interaction equals intimacy. And with YouTube as a platform, you can almost, the interaction, if it's good, jumps off the screen. And so it leads to bigger, better engagement and a better connection.
We haven't really leveraged YouTube except for perhaps, at least not in the more current ways of, particularly when it comes to content contributors and people that really have strong followings and trying to engage with them. I think that's probably an evolution that we're going to be moving towards, particularly in the next year. But we've primarily tried to focus on the other platforms and use YouTube primarily just in terms of our own content. So when it comes to key segments or pieces or capsules that we're doing as part of the parade broadcast, putting those up on YouTube. So.
What I would add is, coming from entertainment, because that's where I work for, it's another dimension that is not as fast as social media. It requires a whole lot more resources and more legal boundaries. So once you're on screen and you have one of those celebrities, you're going to have to call their union. Which means you're gonna have to call me for me to give you clearance for that celebrity that you want. Or if it's an interview, interviews, anything nonfiction is fine, but it is another dimension that is automatically removed when you are just sharing messaging with particular, emojis and characters. Or, doing Instagram with a picture. I mean, their credits, probably, you still have to credit something on Instagram if it's branding or anything marketing. But when we talk about this type of content distribution platforms, that is video that is on screen, or even dare I hazard probably, a podcast that has music in it, it's a different monster that requires a lot more legal resources for you to actually put out. So it depends on if that's something that any of you want to handle.
Right.
you're gonna be giving me a call then.
No, I just had actually one last comment. Nobody asked this question, but I think in the dialogue it came up regarding the commentary, the dialogue that we're having with our followers, with our audiences is, if somebody says something you don't necessarily like, which happens all the time, the one thing we don't do is delete them. Many times we will respond, if we can do so in a way that will not be deemed as antagonizing, because that's another thing we don't want to do is antagonize anybody. The only way, but we do try and respond, and in some cases you just say, hey, you know what? You have your opinion, you leave it there, people can see it. Sometimes your followers will go after that person, and that's the best thing you can do, because then you just sort of sit back and see how the conversation unfolds. But the one exception to that, and where we do delete comments, is if somebody's being degrading, if they're being demoralizing, and being disrespectful, and certainly if they're bullying, then there's no time for that, and we take them down right away. Or if somebody's trying to promote themselves in a way that's inappropriate, we'll put something serious, and then they're trying to promote their next record. It's like, okay, that's not going to happen here either.
You always want to monitor, yes, that's a great point. You always want to monitor any, bullying or anything like that, and make sure that, that sometimes I personally have reported, and if you get kicked off of Facebook, that's not my problem. I personally have, it's very seldom, but I have instances where I've had to report threats, or stuff like that. So you always want to monitor any of your feed and the comments, but it's also crucial. You don't have to agree with the comments, but don't delete them. It's very important for engagement. It actually devalues the algorithm if you are constantly deleting comments and stuff like that. So,
And we also spoke about the importance in terms of the solidarity of the movement, in terms of the building of a community, of a diaspora community, especially now in the situation that Puerto Rico is going through, the importance of respect and tolerance.
Absolutely. Those are the two words, transparency and tolerance, and so that's why, a cardinal rule is to not delete, unless, again, if they're being bad.
Well, thank you very much, Marlena and Luis, for joining us today. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
thank you.